Hello, everyone. This is Stacey with NutritionJobs here for another edition of Dietitian Career Success. Today, I have a dietitian that has a very, very unique career path that I thought that you guys would really enjoy and learn from. Her name is Ashley Tovar. She is a dietitian and a PhD and I'll let her explain all of that. But welcome, Ashley.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You and I had met on social media, and I reached out to you because I just thought you had the most interesting career path that I know other dietitians will love to learn all the different routes that you've taken to get where you're at now. I think that you're probably in a really interesting space right now with how your career has migrated around. So you are a senior scientist, and I think that's unusual for dietitians. So do you mind just giving everybody a little bit of a background on where you've been and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I first set out just to become a dietitian with the plan that maybe I would work more as like a certified diabetes educator or something along those lines, because I learned pretty early through my education that I was really interested in metabolism. I loved learning about all the little, intricacies that we have with the metabolic pathways, and I just thought there was always so much to learn. But then that kind of led to me wanting to know more and more, which led to taking every research opportunity I could at my university at the time. So in undergrad, and then I did a master's, I tried to get as much research experience as I could with just gaining different laboratory techniques. And that led me to wanting to continue with more schooling and getting my PhD in nutritional biology at UC Davis. And while I was there, I also worked at the Western Human Nutrition Research Center, where I was just very fortunate to work with some generous, intelligent scientists that gave me their time and lab resources to learn new techniques. And through that, I learned so much about nutrition research. I worked on phenotyping studies there. And then that gave me the lab skills that I needed to kind of branch out on my own in more of an industry role. So I now work in, I'll just kind of generally say the biotech space, but more so in preclinical pharmaceutical development is more so what I'm focused on now.
That is so interesting. And I think a lot of our listeners will also agree that it's a really interesting path that you have taken. Maybe if you could sort of distill down, like, what are a few skills that sort of got you to where you are today, that one that you already had in you? I'm thinking perseverance is one, but I'll let you say
Yeah.
skills that you sort of were born with, and then maybe some skills that you gained or learned along the way, but maybe start with the skills that you were sort of born with.
Yeah, I think, like most dietitians, I think most dietitians kind of have a similar like thread of personality type of being very, organized, thinking like very detail oriented. So I had that, and that was very helpful from a dietetic standpoint, but also from, a research standpoint of wanting to kind of organize my thoughts and think through, different possibilities with things. And then through my career more on the research side, I think I've learn to have a very healthy skepticism for things. And I not to say that you just assume everything's wrong, but really to take the time to think about why is this happening with an experiment? What could have caused it besides what I think? And really learning to kind of check my own biases with my research and with how I interpret research from others. I think it's also, forced me to have a little bit more I'm sure there's a more eloquent way to word this, but have a bit more of a backbone too as a scientist, because you're constantly submitting your data for like peer review feedback, and everyone's going to have an opinion. And I think what makes you more successful than not as a scientist is if you can kind of take a step back and really take in that feedback and think about, okay, how can I use this in my future research? What could I have done differently with this experiment? And just forces you to constantly be thinking about how you can improve your research processes and things like that. So I think that's something that I've definitely learned along the way and will always need to expand on more.
That is fascinating, actually. Actually, I haven't thought about that before, but you're right. In research, like there's so many eyeballs that are looking at your work and they are trained to find critique and to find problems and to find faults and flaws. So that's a really interesting perspective. And I just sort of to summarize what you just said, like you have learned to sort of be skeptical or critical as well. And that way, it sounds like you can be more receptive to the way forward or the way ahead or different ideas or just being. What I see is that you're not attached to an idea or an outcome, I guess. I mean, I think that's really key in research is not to be attached to this outcome or to have like, really good, clean research anyway. And that is a really interesting skill. What else could you say about skills that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think perseverance, like you said, is another one. Experiments don't always go the way that you think they will. So having the kind of tenacity to keep going and making sure that you keep finding your answers and you don't just give up and say like, well, it didn't work. And also with a career as a scientist too, it's a long process. I think for most people working in the industry space, you're still going to probably need a PhD in many circumstances. Some people can work with a master's and work their way up, but it's a lot of education and time, and it's money and time away from family, and just like with any education that you put a lot of time into, you just have to really know that it's what you want and it has to be worth it. So
Yeah,
put a
yeah,
lot of effort
that's
into that.
understandable. Yeah. All right, maybe you can walk us through sort of a typical day in the life of you at work. And I should preface that you work in metabolism
Yes.
and sort of that field, which is super interesting, and maybe longevity or those areas of nutrition and metabolism. Tell us like sort of a day in the life or like a typical one if you were to aggregate it.
Yeah, I feel like every day is different. Like any job, even as a dietitian, every day is different. Like if you have different types of patients you're going to see, that kind of thing. So with this, I think a lot of that still stands. My main role is to work on looking at our drugs. Does our drug work and is it safe? Those are the big questions that I like to check off. So through that process, it's developing new models of how we want to test things. So that's something I've had to do with other jobs previously too, working for larger pharmaceutical companies. We still have to think about how are we going to test this new disease state and kind of have it happen at an accelerated pace. So coming up with new models so we can test the drugs. It can also be following up on a study that's ongoing and just making sure that everything's going the way that it should, and also interpreting that data and kind of leading that scientific interpretation of what do we do with this? What does it mean for the drug we're looking at? What does it mean for our next steps for what we need to test? And how does it impact our clinical trials eventually? So looking at kind of all the pieces together. Each day is a little different with that, but mostly focusing on studies, generally speaking, is what I do. And then it can also involve working with maybe like a marketing team to kind of explain what our results mean and kind of distill things down for the information that is released. And it can also include publishing research too. And, that's a longer process and takes quite a bit with, going back and forth with your own team and let alone with peer-reviewed researchers. But yeah.
When I was listening to you, I was struck by how well I've been struck the whole time by how well spoken you are, and you have really, really good communication skills, presentation skills, like saying what you want to say. I think dietitians sometimes have an easy time with that, and some dietitians do not have an easy time with that. Like, how have you? So I know that you have to present to the marketing department, which is really different than the research department, I would imagine. Like, how have you sort of honed your skills and to be able to present to that faction within the company? Like, what have you done that you sort of learned along the way?
Yeah, I think honestly it's a lot of trial and error, and making a lot of mistakes in the beginning. I think just my time in grad school, I also taught classes. So I taught some introductory nutrition classes, and then I taught some more advanced classes, and then kind of learning of how to say things in a different way, knowing that everyone comes from a different background of what they know and what they don't know. And I think I really had to kind of foster those skills working at the Western Human Nutrition Research Center, because you have so many different scientists and you have people working in other areas too. It's not everyone's a scientist there. And even the scientists have such like small niche areas that they know so much about, but will know nothing about this other area. So kind of working on distilling all your information down to a way that everyone can understand really is trial and error. I wish I had a better answer than that, but I honestly, definitely messed that up plenty of times in the beginning and just kind of had to learn when I started to see confused faces as I was talking, like, okay, that's not flying. I need to say this a different way. So learning how to do that.
I think that's helpful and also reassuring to others listening to this too. When I worked in research, not at the same level you are, but when I worked in research, I would watch the other researchers talk who are more experienced and just like listen. How is it that they, we would be in the room together going through all the data on SPSS and talking about all the different variables and what we're going to pull out or what we're going to look at, and then so I had seen like the crunchy part of a way to communicate it, and then walk into the person that needed to have it more distilled down or sort of in a more digestible way and watch those other researchers give that information. I'm like, oh, that's really slick. Like, so I think observational learning is comes in really handy as well. So that's helpful. How about the written part of it? Like, how did you learn to do a research writing? I mean, obviously that came with practice, but was there anybody that was a mentor to you, or did you take a specific class on that?
Yeah, good question. I probably should have taken a specific class on that. That might have sped up the process, but I think a lot of it was my mentors in my graduate program were very good about, returning drafts and, heavy edits that really taught me quite a bit. But you slowly learn the voice of these other people who I would put under the category of, like you said, who I look at them and think they are so well spoken and eloquent in the way that they explain these super in-depth scientific processes. So it was just a learning process of kind of observing what they do and having them actually tell me this doesn't say what it should. This isn't giving enough detail, or why are you writing this? Or, just kind of sometimes it was very blunt feedback, and it really helped me kind of hone in on thinking the way that they think. And so
Mm,
spending time with people who I think are more skilled than me is kind of the takeaway to
yeah,
learn more about that writing process.
yeah, yeah. All right. So, what types of tools do you use to help you be successful in your job? I'm thinking you're obviously using some sort of massive database, statistical analysis. I don't know if it's R or if it's SPSS, or maybe you can sort of break down some of the tools that you're using now or that you've used in the past that you think dietitians should know about anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, for stats, I mostly use Prism now, but there's definitely I've used SPSS in the past too. That's another good one. I think for focusing more for when I worked more so as a dietitian and I did some work as like a sports dietitian in a research setting still, I had many tools that I don't know that I'd have if I was in private practice or something like that. But I'd say any kind of tool you can have to better quantify, energy expenditure in your clients and patients is very helpful. I felt like it helped them also have confidence in the information I was giving them and knowing like, okay, this is just for me. And not that a predictive equation isn't helpful. They are so helpful. And a lot of them are very accurate. But at the same time, if you have like a DEXA scan where you can point to the body composition differences and how that equates to different energy needs, or, you have indirect calorimetry that you can use, or something along those lines. Those tools I used pretty often to give more I'll say like personalized nutrition recommendations that our patients and clients felt more confident in.
Yeah, I think it helps them sort of benchmark where they're at and have like more accountability when they have, which is like a feedback thing, right? Like they
Yeah.
have the exact numbers to know. I mean, I know I like that for myself.
Yeah.
So I love my Aura ring to tell me all my data, right? Like, or
Yes.
not enough, but whatever
Yeah.
it does provide is helpful and gives you some feedback. So that's helpful. That's really good. Um, Another area that I always like to focus on with other dietitians is the topic of money and how we can all be making more money as dietitians. And there's so many different ideas, opinions, thoughts, and actual tools to do that. So as you know, I run dietitiansalaries.com, and we look at a lot of different indices and see what it is that is driving income up for dietitians, and advanced degrees is one of the main things. And so thank you for getting an advanced degree. So, um, can you think of other ways that dietitians can be successful, or ways that they can increase their revenue, whether it's advanced certifications, degrees, or anything else that you think would be really helpful from your perspective?
Yeah, I think you kind of already hit it on the nose with that, in that I think whatever additional certifications, webinars, anything that you can learn, and if it's something where that's not available, thinking of a skill that's relevant to what your specialization and area of focus is, and learning it on YouTube even. Like there can be some skills that you learn that way. Obviously, advanced degrees are great, but I also understand that not everyone has the resources to do that, depending on the phase they are in life. So any additional certifications, I think we all, just as dietitians, always want to learn more about our field. So I think wherever your area of interest is, kind of really trying to hone in on that and learn as much about that topic as you can be helpful. And it gives you more to speak about with your clients and patients as well.
Ah, that's really good. Thank you so much for that, Ashley. I have learned a lot from you, and I know everyone else has as well. And you're just a nice shining star in our profession, so it's really nice to hear your words. Any last sort of parting words for how a dietitian can be successful as you, whether it's the perseverance that you've taken or anything else? Any parting words that would be helpful for dietitians?
I think perseverance is the best one. I would love to say that I'm just this amazingly talented, intelligent person, but really, I think it's just the perseverance. That's really what it came down to. I just kept wanting to learn more and was in a place in life where I had the ability to keep exploring these areas that I thought were interesting. So I think just giving yourself the push to keep going on whatever the area is that you want to expand on in your career and giving it as much energy as you realistically can. That's, I guess, the best recommendation I can provide.
Aw, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Very appreciative of it. And hopefully people can connect with you. And thank you so much again. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.